What's going on, everybody? Obviously, it's me, your host of the Energy is Love podcast. Hopefully the reception's good and everything's coming through clear. Of course, right as you push record, the plane decides to fly overhead. So maybe we'll wait half a second until, we're going to wait because it's loud. I love it. It's a beautiful day, though. I'm sitting in our backyard here underneath a beautiful willow tree. So we're going to wait just half a second. Hopefully it's far enough away now so then it doesn't interrupt us again. But I wanted to do a quick video. A lot of times I get this question when I talk to people about the podcast, tell them about it, or even ask them to come on the podcast as a guest. And they're wondering, what is a podcast? And it's a great question if you're not familiar with it or if you've never heard of a podcast before. A podcast, a really easy way to think of it or look at it is it's like an online radio talk show in a sense. And there's so many types of podcasts out there. They're not all interview based. Some podcasts are simply a guy in a microphone, or they're a couple of people in microphones, and it's not necessarily like they're interviewing people. They're talking about different topics and things like that. So it's an easy way to think about it as an online radio show. The way that it differs from radio is vastly. The nicest thing is that they're available all the time. And so unlike radio where you have to kind of schedule and wait, and if you miss, whoever it was that you wanted to listen to or whatever, you don't have that with podcasts. You can listen to them anywhere, all the time. So that's one of the really, really nice benefits of it. A lot of people listen to while they're driving, while they're working out, running, cleaning house, whatever the case may be. But you can always listen, and they're always available, and that makes it really, really nice and convenient. They are also typically a lot longer in format. Not always. Sometimes there's short podcasts out there and things like that. But they're longer than normal, typical radio shows. You don't have to worry about commercials in between. Some podcasts do have commercials in between, not their episodes, but during the episode. With our podcast, with the Energy is Love podcast, we do have sponsors for the podcast. And what I did when I started it, because I don't like listening to an episode and having it interrupted by a commercial. So all of our sponsorship information is typically at the beginning of the episode. And then sometimes we do have some at the very end of the episode as well. But we don't ever interrupt episodes with sponsorship information, even though sometimes we might plug a sponsor during an episode. Excuse me. Podcasts are also unedited, which is really, really nice. And so it's not just, the opportunity to come on and swear, even though obviously we do sometimes on the podcast. But it's real information. It's real conversations and communication. And I think that's one of the things that is vastly different than radio. Not that radio isn't real and you can't find good information out there on radio, but with podcasts it's a little bit more raw at times. It's a little bit more real and fresh, and you don't have to worry about somebody behind the scenes that's going to edit it out or whatever the case may be. Typically what you hear on a podcast is what you get. So ways that you can listen to a podcast, because that's the other big question, is great, now I know what it is, how do I find it, how do I listen to it? Typically, in the realm of podcasting, the easiest place to listen is going to be through iTunes. iTunes is what's kind of made podcasting what it is today. So if you happen to have an iPhone, you can obviously listen to iTunes on your laptop or anything like that, but typically it's iPhones, right? And iPhone is so nice and convenient. I don't have an iPhone, but they have an app. It's purple, and it's labeled podcasts. So you click on that app, and then you'll type in the search bar whatever podcast you're looking for, like Energy is Love podcast, and it'll pop up. Once it pops up, it should have all the episodes available for you. It'll also give you the opportunity to subscribe, which I highly recommend, not just because it helps that individual podcast grow and expand, but it also helps you because if you subscribe to the podcast, then you're going to get notifications typically about when new episodes are released, and it's a lot easier to then find that podcast again and listen to it. So iTunes, there's a purple icon on your phone, on your iPhone, titled podcasts. You can find it there. If you have an Android, which I have an Android, I have a Galaxy, I don't remember which number it is, but I like to listen to all my podcasts, not just the podcast for the universe, but all the podcasts that I listen to on Google Play Music. So that is a little orange icon. It's like a little orange triangle that usually says play music or something like that underneath it. Same thing. Pull that up, search, and there's podcasts on that as well. And so that's where I choose to listen. But our podcast And the vast majority of podcasts out there, you can find them on Stitcher, iHeartRadio. There's tons and tons and tons of actual just podcasting apps out there. One of them's like Podcast Addict. That's a pretty popular one. Any of those apps designed specifically for podcasting, the same thing. You'll just pull it up, search, hit subscribe, and then you can find all the episodes there. Obviously, with our podcast, you can always go listen on our website as well. That's really easy if you're on your computer. You can also listen to it on your phone through the website. It's still easy. It's just not as convenient at times. So that's another thing. You can go to our website, energieslovepodcast.com, find all of our episodes and listen to them all straight through the website. Oh, excuse me. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about, I keep looking, I wrote a list so I didn't forget everything. I think I've got everything as far as what a podcast is, how to listen to a podcast, where to listen. When you do subscribe to them, it's always a good idea, especially if you're on iTunes. If you're listening through iTunes, subscribe to the show, but then also take a minute and rate and review the show. The reason behind that is it really, really helps that individual podcast reach bigger audiences. iTunes is like anything else, right? Apple has algorithms and all sorts of top secret information that they use in order to put out their like new and noteworthy, all sorts of different things like that. So one of the things that you can do if you like the podcast and you want to help it grow and reach a bigger audience is take a minute and not just subscribe, but rate and review it. Even if you just leave a really quick, brief review, it's always beneficial. I know I love it when it happens on our show, and everybody out there that hosts and puts out a podcast is a big fan of that as well. A couple of things with our podcast, since I've got you live right now. There's some things coming up. We've mentioned them in earlier videos, and if you listen to our show regularly, you hear about it as well. But we do have a live episode coming out May 13th. That's when we're going to be on at the Infinite Possibilities Higher Consciousness Festival, May 13th, 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. It's going to be a lot of fun. Anna Sierra, AJ Rasmussen, and Chad Davis are going to be the guests on that show. We're going to shoot it, film it live. We'll do it live! I'm cracking myself up. But yeah, it's going to be a live episode. You guys will be able to watch and tune in and react and respond, and we'll do a Q&A at the end and everything like that. So I'm excited and looking forward to it. As always, thank you for everybody's support. Thank you to all of our sponsors, everybody that's listening to the show, everybody that's been a guest on the show. We still have a lot of episodes. I've got like 4 or 5 episodes that I need to get to editing and working on so that we can get them released and get them out there. We also have some ways that you'll be able to support the podcast in the coming weeks, which is going to be really exciting. I'm going to give you a little hint, maybe. There may be a possibility that this may have something to do with it. I'm not just pointing at my wrist, but we're going to come up with some ways that if you want to sponsor, or not sponsor, but support the podcast, then you'll get a little something in return for it. So keep an eye out for that. We're going to throw that out in the next few weeks. But thank you very much. Hopefully that answered your question. What is a podcast? And if you do have other questions, by all means, leave them in the comments and we'll get to them when we get a time and when we get the opportunity and a chance. But hopefully that answers your question, what a podcast is, how to find the podcast, how to listen to it, all that kind of fun stuff. So go out and download podcasts and support podcasts. Not just our podcast, but any podcast out there, because it's an amazing format. It's amazing. It's going to change so many different things about people's concepts and ideas, because it's a wonderful way to get information. So thank you very much. Much love, everybody. Go out and have a beautiful, 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 wonderful day like it is here today. Goodbye.